In this lesson, you're going to use your knowledge of three-dimensional shapes and surface area in order to find the surface area of pyramids and composite prisms. And we're going to start with example number 1, where we're being asked to calculate the surface area of the rectangular pyramid. And if we investigate the rectangular pyramid, we know that this is going to have 5 different faces. It's got 4 triangular faces, and it's got a base, which in this case happens to be a square. We can see that it's an 8 by 8 square base. And so we're going to find the areas of each of the faces. We have our square base, and all 4 of the triangles are congruent to each other. We can see that they all have a base of 8 centimeters and a height of 5 centimeters. This 5 centimeters is perpendicular to the base. And so we're going to find the area of all 4 of our triangles in one step here. Now let's start with the base. We know that for a square, the formula we're going to use is area equals base times height. And we know that it's an 8 by 8 square, which is going to give us an area of 64 square centimeters. For the triangles now, we know that the formula is 1/2 base times height to find the area. And we said before that the base is 8 centimeters and the height is 5 centimeters. And so we're going to be finding half of 8, which we know is 4. 4 times 5 is 20 square centimeters, and that's the area of one triangle. We know that there are 4 triangles, so we're going to do 4 times 20, which is going to give us 80 square centimeters for the area of the 4 triangles combined. Now to find the total surface area, all we need to do is combine our area of the square base and the area of the 4 triangles, and that's going to give us 64 plus 80, which is 144 square centimeters. In example 2, you're going to calculate the surface area of the trapezoidal prism, and on this trapezoidal prism there are going to be 6 surfaces that we need to find these areas for. We've got the front and the back, which are shaped like trapezoids, and then we have 4 rectangles, the top, the bottom, and the left and the right sides. And so we're going to find the areas of all of those faces, our top and our bottom. And the front and the back are congruent to each other, so we'll find those together, front and the back faces. And then the same thing for the left and the right. The left and the right are congruent as well. They're both 15 by 5. We can see here 5 yards, and that's 15 over there as well. So we'll find the left and right sides in one step as well, left and the right. Okay, and so we'll start with the top. Area equals base times height because it's a rectangle, and we can see that it's a 4 by 15 rectangle. 4 times 15, that's going to give us 60 square yards as its area. For the bottom, we can see here that it's a 10 by 15 rectangle, so area equals base times height, and we substitute in 10 and 15, which is going to give us an area of 150 square yards. For the left and the right, again, they're rectangles, so we're going to have area equals base times height. And we said before that it's a 15 by 5 rectangle, 15 times 5. Well, that's going to give us an area of 75 square yards. But since the left and the right are congruent to each other, we're going to double that. 2 times 75 is going to give us 150 square yards. And that leaves us with the front and the back. The front and the back are congruent to each other, and they're trapezoids, so we're going to use the trapezoid area formula. Area equals 1/2 in parentheses base 1 plus base 2 times the height. And looking at these values here, we see that the bases of the trapezoid are 10 and 4. They're the 2 sides that are parallel to each other. And then the height, we can see right here, is also going to be 4 yards. And so following order of operations, we're going to have 1/2 of 14 times 4. And then if we do half of 14, we know that that's going to be 7, and then 7 times 4 is 28. So it's 28 square yards for one of the faces, but since they're congruent, we'll double that, 2 times 28, which is going to give us 56 square yards. And now all we have to do is find the total surface area. So again, we're going to add everything together. We're going to take the 60, the 150, the other 150 for the left and the right sides, and then the 56 for the front and the back. And then that's going to add up to 416 square yards. In example 3, we're told that the base of a right rectangular prism is 4 feet by 6 feet, and we're told that the surface area is 288 square feet. They want us to find the height, and I gave you a little hint here to use the formula that we learned for surface area of a right rectangular prism from last class. And we know that that formula, the surface area, is equal to 2 times the length times the width, plus 2 times the length times the height, plus 2 times the width times the height. And so I don't have a picture here, but I do have enough information where that I can substitute into my formula. The surface area was given. We were told that the surface area is 288 square feet, so we'll substitute that value in. And we're told that for the base of the right rectangular prism, it's a 4 foot by 6 foot rectangle, so that those values can be our length and our width because we're looking for the height. So I'll use 4 feet to be my length. I'll use 6 feet to be my width. So substituting in here, 2 times length times width, I'm going to have 2 times 4 times 6, plus 2 times, I'm going to use 4 for the length times h, the height is what we're looking for, plus 2 times the width, I'm using 6 times h, the height, again, that's what we're looking for. I'll evaluate any multiplications that I can do first, so 288 is going to be equal to, well, 2 times 4 is 8, 8 times 6 is 48, plus 2 times 4 is 8, 8 times h is just 8h, plus 2 times 6 is 12, 12 times h is 12h. And I see here that I've got an equation that I need to solve in order to get the value of h, the height. And so I know I can combine my similar terms here, ah and 12h, so I'm going to have 288 equals 48 plus 20h when I combine 8h and 12h. And now this is just a basic two-step equation. So the next thing we're going to do is subtract the 48 from each side. 288 minus 48 leaves us with 240. And then 48 minus 48 is 0, so that just leaves us with 20 times h, but we don't want 20h, we just want to know the value of h. And so we're going to divide each side by 20. And when we do that, we get a value of h equals 240 divided by 20 is 12. And so that is the answer to our problem. We know that the height of the prism is 12 feet. The height of the prism is 12 feet. In example number 4, we're calculating the surface area of the composite shape shown below, and looking at this composite shape, it looks like that we have a rectangular pyramid stacked on top of a rectangular prism. And we're going to calculate the surface area, and again, we're just looking for the area of the outside faces on this shape. And so if we think about what's going to be on the outside here, okay, the very bottom, well, we know this is going to be a square base, and so that's one face whose area we're going to have to find, the area of the square base. And then we see that there are also 1, 2, and on the back and on the other side, that's going to be a total of 4 rectangle faces that are on the outside. So we're going to have our rectangles, and they're all congruent to each other, so we find the area in just one step for those. And then we also have on the top here, we've got 4 triangular faces, and those triangles are also congruent to each other, and so we'll find their areas in one step as well. And so we're going to start with the square base. The area formula again is area equals base times height. And we can see that it's a 9 foot by 9 foot base. 9 times 9 is going to give us an area of 81 square feet. For the rectangles, we can see that the rectangles are 9 foot by 5 foot rectangles. So area equals base times height. We'll substitute those values in. 9 times 5, which we know is 45 square feet. But then since there are 4 of them, we're going to multiply that by 4. 4 times 45 is going to give us a total of 180 square feet for the 4 rectangles. And now we just have to find the area of our triangular faces. The formula again, area equals 1/2 base times height. And looking at the picture, we can see that the base is 9 feet and the height is going to be 6 feet. So 1/2 times 9 times 6. 9 times 6 I know is 54. Half of 54 is going to be 27 square feet. But again, there are 4 of them that are congruent to each other, so we'll do 4 times 27, which is going to be 108 square feet. And now all we have to do is add all these values together to get the total surface area. We have 81 for the square base, 180 for the rectangles, 108 for the triangles, which is going to give us a total surface area of 369 square feet. In example 5, we have another composite shape whose surface area we're trying to find, and this one's a little more complicated than the last one that we looked at because it's got this little piece here, if we look in the corner, that's been cut out, and so that's going to lead to a number of different faces whose areas that we're going to have to find, and so we're going to be a little strategic about how we do this. We're going to start by looking at the front face here. This is just a rectangle, and so for the front, I know my area formula is going to have to be area equals base times height. And I can see here that it's a 16 2/10 inch base, and then the height here is the same height all the way around, which we find right here is 8 6/10. And so I'll substitute these values in, 16 2/10 times 8 6/10, and when I multiply those together, that gives me an area of 139 32 square inches. Next, I'm going to be moving to the face of the back. Back here is another rectangle. It's an 18 4/10 inch by 8 6/10 inch rectangle. So area equals base times height. We'll substitute those values in, 18 4/10 times 8 6/10. And multiplying there, that's going to give us an area of 158 24 square inches. We have a face on the left, which is also a rectangle, so we're going to have area equals base times height. And looking at the left side over here, well, we can see it's going to be a 24 inch by 8 6/10 inch rectangle. So the area here is going to be 24 times 8 6/10, and that's going to give us a total area for that face of 206 4/10 square inches. We also have this rectangular face on the right side, only going from here to here. So I'm going to look at the right face first. Okay, an area equals base times height. And we can see here it's got a base of 19 2/10 inches and a height of 8 6/10 inches. So we'll substitute those values in, 19 2/10 times 8 6/10. And this is going to give us an area of 165 12 square inches. Okay, and so now we're getting to the part where it's going to be a little interesting. We've got these two little cutouts here whose areas we need to find, and then we also need to work with the top and the bottom. And so I think I'm going to start actually with the top and bottom, since they're congruent to each other, the top and the bottom. And if I look at those, well, I can think to myself that I would probably want to try to cut this up into two different size rectangles. Okay, I'll have a rectangle here and I'll have a rectangle up here, and I'm going to try to find those areas there. Okay, well, in order to be able to figure that out, I know for this rectangle here it's 16 2/10 inches, but I've got to be able to figure out how much this value is here. Well, looking at this side, I know from here to here is a total of 24 inches, and I also know that from here to here is 19 2/10 inches. And so to figure out how much it is from here to here, I'm going to have to subtract 24 and 19 2/10, and that's going to give me 4 8/10. So from here to here, this segment is 4 8/10 inches. Okay, and so now I know for this little rectangular piece, okay, the area is going to be 16 2/10 times 4 8/10. But then I've also got to add it to this rectangle found right here. So again, I'm going to have to figure out, well, I know that this entire length is 18 4/10 inches, and I just said that this was 19 2/10 inches, so I'll have 18 4/10 times 19 2/10, and I'm going to combine these values. So when I multiply first here, I get 77 76 plus 353 28 hundredths. And now I add those together and I get 431 400 square inches. But I'm going to have to double that because the front and the top and the bottom are congruent to each other, which is going to give us 862 800 square inches. Next are these two little rectangular cutouts. Looking at this rectangle right here, well, we found out from before that this was 4 8/10 times the height right here of 8 6/10. So when I multiply those together, I get 41 28 hundredths. With my other rectangular cutout here, I knew the height again was 8 6/10. I had to calculate this little piece here by doing 18 4/10 minus the 16 2/10, which gives me 2 2/10. So if I multiply 2 2/10 by 8 6/10, I get 18 92 square inches. And the last thing I'm going to have to do is add up all of these values to get my total surface area.